Welcome to Graphs of Polynomials Day 2. This is from your worksheet 5.2. Let's start with number 1. Number 1 says, describe the end behavior and turning points of a polynomial functions. So here we have a graph. We want the degree, the leading coefficient, the end behavior, and the number of turning points. Now, some of these things we're not going to be able to give very specifics on as far as like the leading coefficient. We don't know exactly what that is, but we can tell if it's positive or negative. But let's start with the degree. So we're going to base our degree on the number of turning points. Okay, so we have number 1, something that starts down and ends up. So I know it has to be an odd degree. And then I have 1, 2, here's 1 turning point, here's 2, 3, and then 4 turning points. So my degree has to be at least a degree of 5, if not higher. For the leading coefficient, I have to think about my end behavior. Well, let's write that down first. Well, my end behavior means I start down, my arrows start down, and then I end up. And I kind of compare that to almost being like a positive sloping line, and therefore my leading coefficient is also positive because I'm starting at the lower left-hand corner, ending in the upper right. The number of turning points, well, I've already calculated that. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So sometimes you actually have to start with the number of turning points, even to start all the rest of to get the rest of the information that you need from the graph. Okay, next problem. Let's talk about number 8. So number 8 says graph the following polynomial functions. So we're going to be sketching a rough graph based on plugging in values and seeing what our xy's are. So I'm going to use my calculator to help me plug in each of my x values that I've chosen into my function. Now I have a quadratic, so I have a pretty good idea of what it should look like. It should, and it's negative, so it should start down, if you think about end behavior, and also end down. And then it could have a maximum of 3 terms. So let's take a look. When I plug in -3 into here, and I'm going to really be very careful that I'm using parentheses when I plug this into my calculator. So like, for example, for the very first one, you're going to get -3 to the 4th power. You make that negative at plus 8 times -3. And when you punch that in your calculator here, you should get a -81 because this is a positive 81, and then you have to add that extra negative. And then -24. So your first answer should be a -105. Now I want you to continue to calculate that. Here you have a -2, you plug it in, you do your calculations. -2 to the 4th power, that's positive 16. Because -16 minus 16 is -32. When I plug in -1, I'll get a -9. When I plug in 0, well, 0 to the 4th power is 0, and 0 times 8 is 0, so I also get 0. Plug in 1. 1 to the 4th power, still 1, but that's a -1. And then you add 8, that's a negative, gives you a positive 7. For 2 to the 4th power is 16, -16. Then I'm adding 16, so I get 0 again. And then for 3 to the 4th power is 81. I get a -81, but I'm adding 24. So I get a -57. So the next part I want to do now that I've found all my values is I want to graph the ones that I can. Obviously, I won't be able to graph -5, 3, 105, and -2, -32 on my graph. It doesn't go that low. So I'm going to start with -1, -9. So -1, -9 is right here. And then 0, 0. And then 1, 7. And 2, 0, and then I can't really do 33. So if you take a look at this, it looks kind of like a parabola. And it should, remember it should, and now forgive my lines, they're so bad. They're much smoother on the answer key. But if you take a look at it, it looks like a parabola. And it looks like the maximum number of terms we have is only one term up here, what looks like the vertex. So remember that when you are graphing a polynomial function, it can have a maximum of, in this case, 3 turns, but in the one we're graphing it looks like it only has one turning point. The end behavior, like we talked about up here, just based on the graph, is down, down. My leading coefficient is a -1. And the degree is 4, and I'm going to make sure I name that as well as a quartic. Okay. If you have any additional questions, please see me or Mr. Daniels, and have a fabulous time doing the rest of your homework.